Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Maria McQuay and I'm Head of Programme at Bluecoat. I'm speaking to you from my home in Liverpool and I'm assisted by my colleague Louis, invisibly over in Manchester. Welcome to A Belly of Irreversibles with Maria Fusco. This is the second of 3 online events for Fusco and Edwards Wales and Venice exhibition and Do Things Done, which in itself has recently moved online. We're really honoured to have Maria Fusco with us today. She's an acclaimed writer who works across the registers of fiction, performance and theory, and she's also Professor of Interdisciplinary Writing at Dundee. She's here to read a newly commissioned work, A Belly of Irreversibles, which is a tangential response to Fusco and Edwards' exhibition and distills class as lived experience into a lyric essay. I have it in my hands. And it'll be out with Corner House Books in spring, but it's the first time we're going to get to hear it and share it. Importantly, we also have Fusco and Edwards with us, whose 2019 presentation for Wales and Venice has seen him awarded a Turner Prize bursary, and elements of this show, which has been on tour to lead organisation TPELB and then to us at Bluecoat, will be included in the upcoming British Art Show. He's here as a respondent to Maria and then in conversation with curator Kim McAleese next week. I'm going to pass over to them both to say hello and tell us where they are talking to us from. And I'll come back and properly introduce what we're going to experience today. So I'm going to pass over to Sean first.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm speaking from Cardiff, from my studio in Cardiff, which as you can see is an absolute mess at the moment.
Hello everybody, nice to say hello virtually. I'm in Scotland.
Thank you very much. I should say we're recording today so that we can re-release this as a subtitled talk, and that we're experimenting with questions coming in a Q&A box, I think, but the chat box may also be open. Submit your questions wherever you can and I will read them out, so that's a promise. I'm just going to give a little bit more context before going to Maria, because she was asked to make a tangential response to and Do Things Done, a poetic inquiry into place, politics and class that had at its heart and has as its heart a work of theatre, a radio play co-commissioned by National Theatre Wales. This was originally performed live and transmitted every day from her flat. There's a picture here of her with Hadley, her stage manager, because whether you're recording at home or at the theatre, you need a stage manager. And it was transmitted at the same time every day to the venue in Venice. We might have some pictures of Venice coming up. The play, which also went on to become a Radio 4 commission, something else we have in common with Maria Fusco, collages fragments of her own life, of Lily's life growing up in a Catholic children's home, of periods of homelessness, of being a single mother, of working as a cleaner, Sean's own life growing up in a single parent family, shifting between perspectives of an absent father and husband, but also containing everyday details such as adverts of credit and extracts from other writers. It was made for her voice and her voice alone, a voice that is made in Northern Ireland, overlaid with Cardiff, that's elderly, that has a particular kind of life within it and isn't a voice that you hear on the media or in other kind of platforms. And Sean describes her voices as the integral part of the material of her work. Sean wanted to add another voice to the exhibition as it toured, and it could only be Maria Fusco's, someone who also understands class as lived experience and who has the most incredible way of weaving fragments together to make art. Having invited her to respond, but also make her own kind of response to this piece, we published a new publication, which we can share with you on screen in a moment. But I'm going to ask Maria to read, because this is the thing you've all come for, really, is to hear Maria read A Belly of Irreversibles. I'll ask a couple of questions and then I'll pick some questions out of the chat. So thank you very much. Maria, I'm going to pass over to you.
Thank you, Marianne. I was really, really chuffed to be asked to write this piece. And I listened very, very closely to Lily's voice. So Sean's mum's voice. I listened really closely to it over many periods of time, and I'm sure that you've all heard it, and I would encourage you to go back and to listen to it again. So the piece that I'm going to read you is, yes, a response. It's a very personal piece for me. It's very, it's very personal. So I'm very happy to be able to share it with you. So without further ado, as they say, I'll read it. Okay. A Belly of Irreversibles. I was never allowed to tell people where I lived. This was because I lived in a bad area. Other things were classified as bad, but they were always plural. There was only one bad area, the one I lived in. I now live in a good area. I'm still working class. Sitting in a hotel breakfast room on Renfrew Street in Glasgow, I heard a loud ringtone rattling out from the kitchen. It was the sash. I told the person I was with what I was hearing, but they didn't understand, so I had to explain what the sash is and how it sickens and scares working class Northern Irish Catholics of my generation. I was very careful to keep my voice down so the person in the kitchen with the sash ringtone wouldn't hear me, wouldn't poison my breakfast, wouldn't try to kill me. I had completely lost my appetite. When the full Scottish breakfast I'd ordered, before hearing the sash ringtone arrived, I gulped down every last scrap so nothing went to waste. I was tempted to drink the milk in the little jug too, because it was free, and that was what I used to be told to do when I was growing up for the calcium. I did not want to do this, and I didn't do this because I was worried the person I was with, someone who I knew quite well, who was and is actually a friend, and who is also working class, I was worried that they would judge me. I was calibrating what magnitude of working class behaviour was acceptable and how working class my friend actually was compared to how working class I was and still am. When I went to primary school, I could already read and count. My dad had taught me. He was always unemployed, as were all the other men in the bad area, so he was about a lot. The primary school class of 33 was divided into 3 different reading groups, apparently according to aptitude. I was put into the lowest ability group because of the bad area I lived in. I knew this was unfair for me and for the others, but I could not prove they could read. I could only prove I could read. The first thing I want to know about people is what class they are. I don't believe in social mobility. You're always the same class as the one you grew up in, even if your circumstances have radically changed, like mine have. It's relatively easy in the UK to work out what class people are, if you've got the appetite for it. However, when you start working abroad, which if you've actioned your spiralling upward mobility aspirations well enough, you will be, the impossibility of being absolutely sure you're grasping the nuance of detectable signifiers of another country's class system. You simply cannot be as sure as you would like to be. This is actually a pretty constricting way to be in the world. On the rare occasions I was offered a lift home from school by the mother of one of my lower middle class schoolmates, I always had to tell them I lived in a different area, an area 3 tiers better than my own, but a working class area nonetheless, so I would appear credible. The mothers with cars would bring me to where I asked them to, and then they'd drop me off. I would wait until they'd driven quite a while off, assuring them I was fine, and then I walked the long walk home. It would have been quicker just to have walked straight back from school. I knew, they knew I was lying, because each mother only ever offered once and then never again. This made me feel ashamed. Ashamed I had to lie, but not ashamed about the bad area I lived in, because I knew this was not my fault. The thing is to be of use. I note how sometimes other writers evoke a relatively well-known Greek myth to lend gravity and longitudinal context to their subject. You'll start noticing it too now I've drawn your attention to it. You probably have already anyway. Maybe you even like it. And you know what? Sometimes I like it myself, actually. I try to summon a Greek myth to dance teasingly in this text, like the woman from the opening credits of Tales of the Unexpected, to give myself the dignity I think this subject deserves. Sisyphus immediately comes to mind because, well, you know, it's obvious. Prometheus, I have a fancy for the rage and symbolism of fire and the image of his luscious regenerating liver, but I cannot stomach any evocation of the shite Ridley Scott film. Antigone's moral grandeur seduces, then mocks me with its completeness. The working class way is fragmentary and composed of glittery remnants, harp beer can ring pools, shattered glass, pearlescent flame streaked with blood. The rest of that day in Glasgow, I kept thinking about the leftover milk in the wee jug in the hotel breakfast room, of it being poured down the sink, and of the awful waste. I had an argument with a friend once about innate cultural value. Drink had been taken. I gave the example of how Metal Mickey is just as important as Jules Gin, which, by the way, in case you're wondering, I consumed all of greedily when I was growing up, as well as everything else that was on the TV because I never went out. I said to my friend that Metal Mickey is as important as Jules Gin because it has to do with the analytical eye you're casting over the content and not the content itself. I knew my example was facetious and a bit silly, but I really felt it. I still really feel it. I chose Jules Gin rather than another more obscure and to me probably more interesting film because I thought they would have been more likely to have seen Jules Gin than say Come and See or Temrock. So yes, I was sort of patronising them. They snorted. I mean, they actually snorted with derision. Taste, it's actually quite easy to learn. It was only when I started mixing with middle class people, I realised drinking excessive amounts of alcohol can bloat you. The neighbours I'd grown up beside in the bad area, mainly men who were always unemployed, the ones who drank excessive amounts of alcohol, not everybody did. They were emptied out by it. There was nothing left of them. A friend told me about somebody they know who used to get a raw jelly cube in their school lunchbox as a sweet treat. They told me this because they were trying to explain how poor the other person was. They were trying to be nice. They also told me because, well, let's face it, it is a funny image, bouncy. I laughed to be polite, and because, as I've just said there, it is quite amusing. What I was really thinking was, I would have rather had a raw jelly cube than a free school dinner. I am disgusted and overwhelmed by the idea of wastefulness, yet I think I waste a lot of my own time. I think this is because my time feels like it costs nothing. I am my own resource. I use myself. I wear myself out. I'm doing it for you now on this page. I was introducing the film I'd selected to be shown at a festival. When standing at the mic, just about to speak, it occurred to me that what I'm really interested in is working classness's method. If you've grown up very poor working class, it's relatively straightforward to describe the slight portions of poverty, the half-full milk jug, the jelly cube, and yes, they are often calibrated by food. I mean, honest to God, how could they not be? but it's so very hard to explain the essential distinctiveness of working classness and how it burrows under your nails. Now, I bite my nails, so obviously I'm speaking figuratively, but it does feel like a burrowing entering your body, like a ceremony. And at the film festival, into the mic, I said, what I am really interested in is working classness's method. I was surprised it came out. Afterwards, quite a lot of people came up to me asking in a genuine way what I meant by working classness's method. And I wondered, why are they so interested? Tantalus, should have summoned Tantalus. And I return to this question regularly. What does working classness's method actually mean? And again, I'm here with it now, with you in this text, clattering the tin bones of being working class. How you go about things, how you imagine something will turn out, the juicy combinatorial possibilities, how it actually turns out, wanting but never being sure. I told my mother about the sash ringtone incident in Glasgow. I told her because I had little else to talk with her about and was trying to fill time on the telephone. Her voice was stiff with anger. Did you give them your real name? Yes, of course I gave them a real name. I had to have been invited to give a public lecture, but why? Why did you give them your real name? She was trying to be helpful. I've been invited to be myself. What else could I have done?
Thank you so much, Maria. We're going to imagine this moment of quietness and applause that we would have if we were all together, but thank you. It's fantastic to hear you read this out, and it's obviously just been written very, very recently as well, so we're all absorbing and processing it.